Welcome to today's webinar on tectonic shifts in talent acquisition with a deep dive into SAP SuccessFactors. This is part of AKT's Insights series, where AKT has been an SAP Gold Partner for more than 6 years. Before I pass this webinar to our panel, let me first introduce AKT to those who are first-time participants. In more than 16 years, AKT has built a leading business in both HR consultancy and HR cloud implementation services for customers across Europe and in the Middle East. And 2 years ago, launched the Industry Accelerator for HR tech startups. We have more than 200 staff members globally, and together we have been part of hundreds of SuccessFactors implementations for both general businesses as well as large enterprises. And over 600,000 employees in these organizations have benefited from our solutions. Our presenters today are Eitan Bernstein, co-founder and managing partner of the People Advisory business at AKT, and Jessica Boyko, who is our SAP SuccessFactors recruiting and onboarding team leader. So with that, I pass it over to Eitan to begin the presentation.
So hello everyone. We're going to talk about a little bit about the major shifts that are happening, and any of you on this call who deal in any way with recruiting or talent acquisition obviously are feeling that things are changing rapidly, and maybe explain a little bit about those changes, but mostly talk about how as organizations we can deal with those changes in the way we address our talent acquisition function. So I think everyone here feels that there's a real shift going on, and part of that is because there's a shift in balance of power between recruiters or between their organizations and the candidates, and that's happened in the last few years. I think many organizations feel that the last 2-3 years, we mark 2016 as the year that actually the shift happened, and that's driven by a number of different things. Of why that's happened. I'll try to explain that in a second. We understand this is not new. So anyone in this industry in the last 15-20 years has understood that there's been a slow but powerful shift that's happened over the last few years, which is why we're calling it a tectonic shift. And that right now we've reached the tipping point. Unless something major happens in the markets, in the changes in technology, in the growth of GDP in major countries, then this is probably going to continue and be what we're experiencing. And the question is, why is this happening and how can we address it? So I think it's happening because of 3 major catalysts. So one is the talent shortage. So in most markets, but definitely in North America and Europe and more in even in emerging markets, there's a feeling that there's a major talent shortage in general, with unemployment being lowest ever in many markets in the Western world, but also specifically in important roles and jobs where skills are really missing. And that's not only in technology, not only in high-end areas like cyber and technology and big data and analytics. We're seeing that in traditional skilled trades that are disappearing from the world in many areas, but still in much demand, as you can see here, obviously in IT, but even areas of sales and engineering and technical positions as a growing gap. And just as an example, these are for the UK, but in many of the markets, we're seeing lots of publications and data that there's simply a talent shortage. And when there's a talent shortage, obviously it puts the candidates in a strong position versus organizations who are looking for candidates. The second catalyst to this change in the relationship between employers and candidates is the emergence of the informed employee and informed candidate. Compared to a few years ago, where it was difficult to find opportunities, where information wasn't necessarily readily available, there is so much information available to candidates. It's so easy for them to find opportunities. There's so many platforms, whether it's LinkedIn and Facebook, Glassdoor, and many other local solutions in many markets where candidates can find out information about organizations, can find opportunities. Opportunities are finding them, and so they're in a completely different position in terms of what they know about the organization. And because people have so much information, they're proactive about searching and doing their research before applying to a job. A recent research study by CareerBuilder shows that 64% of candidates spend specific significant amount of time researching a job on Google and other platforms before applying for a job. And one of the very interesting things is that those candidates won't apply for a job, and they'll move on to research the next company if they're not able to find the information they're looking for. So for instance, if they're looking for information about your company culture, if they're looking for information about your company leadership, if they're looking for information about the opportunities for careers beyond the immediate job, if they can't find that information readily, they'll just continue to do research on the next company, and they won't spend the time to continue to look for information, which is already a hint about what we need to do with some of these candidates. And of course, with candidates being so informed, they also have much more information to make decisions whether to apply for a company or not just based on hearsay or their best friends or people that work in the company, but based on platforms like Glassdoor. And here you can see, not surprisingly, that when a company has very low scores on any of the rating platforms, candidates won't apply. Only 1 in 5 candidates, and obviously not the ones with options, will apply to a company with 1-star reviews, and only 1 in 3 candidates will apply for companies with 2-star reviews. So obviously that really impacts how you need to manage as an organization, your brand, the way you're ranked in different areas and so on. And that's not surprising. We wouldn't go to a restaurant in a city that we're visiting if we don't check what the TripAdvisor ratings are on the restaurant. Obviously, people won't work for a company where the ratings are not good for the employees and candidates. And the third catalyst really impacting the relationship between employers and potential candidates is the idea that not only our candidates have more information and they're more informed, but they're actually activists and they're actually more empowered. So maybe in the past, a candidate either had information or didn't, either applied or did not. But today, a candidate will really impact a much broader audience based on their experience. So when a candidate comes through a process in your organization and has a poor experience, many of them will go online and report or tell their friends and peers about that experience, whether it's on Facebook or on other social media. And that has a very, very negative impact on your entire organization and the entire candidate pool for your company. So we're not just looking at making sure they get the right information, have the right experience. We're making sure that the effect that has on a broader audience is positive. And so when you take all these 3 things and this major trend that's changing, we understand that if it's a candidate market and candidates are informed and they're activists about their relationship with the companies that they're candidates for, we need to take a position, organizations need to take a position that's a much more marketing oriented, much more selling position in the past. If once we were buying and the candidates need to sell themselves to us, they needed to convince us that they were the best, most appropriate candidate for their position. And when organizations were in the position to make the selection, today the power is in the hands of the candidates, and the organization needs to much more focus on selling to the candidate, on marketing to the candidate, on branding the organization to the candidate. And then the question is, what can we do about it, given this trend? And I think it's not new to anyone on this call who's interested in talent acquisition that one of the big areas that everyone's looking at is the candidate experience. If the candidates are going to decide to come to an organization based on the experience they have in the recruiting process, then we need to manage the candidate experience in a completely different, much more holistic and deep way than in the past. And when we talk about the candidate experience, we're using this definition that it's really the continuum of all the interactions, the touch points, and various other ways in which the company, the recruiters and hiring managers engage with candidates through the entire candidate journey. So it starts with things that are not even necessarily directly in your control, like the public information available on your organization and in social media, and of course through any formal interaction that happens with the candidates along the way. And organizations are realizing that anything that happens throughout all those interactions, whether in their direct or indirect control, have a major impact on the candidate experience and therefore on their final decision whether to come work for you or not, and on how they communicate their experience to the environment around them. When we talk about experience, whether it's candidate experience or employee experience or customer experience, we like using this model, very simple model talking about experience. And just for those of you who have not thought about the world of experience deeply, we're talking about, first of all, a good candidate experience or any kind of experience, first of all, needs to be effective. So when we talk about designing candidate experience, we need to make sure that the number one thing it does is it achieves effectiveness. If our objective of the process is to hire great candidates, is to do effective sourcing, to do great screening, to have many of the best people that we want accept an offer and come and join our company, that's the effectiveness of the process. And we need to make sure that in the end, that's the result the process is affecting. That's not new. On top of that, we need to ensure that a process for it to have a positive experience is easy. And when we say easy, it's not designing it only to be easy for the recruiters or for the hiring managers. That's very important, but primarily that we make it easy for the person experiencing, in this case, the candidate. And easy, we'll talk about how to do that in many, many different interactions, how the candidate experience with your organization becomes consumer grade. Consumer grade meaning as easy as it is to buy a book on Amazon, as easy it is to buy a ticket online or to get information, that easy. And most important, you can have an effective process that's easy, but doesn't create a positive emotion. And so we talk about experience, it's really in the end, beyond the effectiveness of the process and the easiness of the process, is what emotion does that process create? Does it create a positive emotion, a negative emotion, or maybe no emotion at all? And when we want to create a positive experience, we want to surprise, we want to delight. We want to create something that says, wow, this excites me. I want to come to this organization. My interactions with the recruiting team, with the hiring managers was amazing. Everything I saw in this company gets me really excited about coming. That's emotion. And that's not a technical thing to design. When we look at designing experiences, we really recommend using classic design methodologies. And this is just an example of how to look at an experience and a journey from an emotional perspective. As you can see on the left, we have a negative, a neutral, or a positive emotion. And compared to designing processes in a very block engineering kind of way, which looks as very much from an efficiency and effectiveness way, when we look at designing a journey from an emotional perspective, we're really trying to look at what the candidate is experiencing and what creates a positive experience and what creates a negative experience. So if we look at this example of Harry's journey, here's Harry, who is a client of the product of the organization that he's looking at. And he sees he's a satisfied client, and he sees the organization's commercials everywhere. And he has a general positive feeling toward the organization. And he's starting to think about maybe his next step in his career. And when he's looking for an opportunity, he finds a real opportunity that meets what he's looking for, a job search engine. And that's not yet exciting, but when he goes to Glassdoor and says, well, what does this organization do as an employer, he gets really, really positive because he knows the organization from a product perspective. Now he sees that also the organization pays well and generally has good feedback on Glassdoor. Wonderful. So he decides to take action. And this is a really critical aspect in managing the recruiting, just like in managing marketing and sales, is getting passive candidates to actually take action and begin a relationship. But when Harry comes to the company website, he discovers that there's no online application. He needs to fill all kinds of forms out and send them. It takes him a half a day to complete the application. He gets very, very frustrated. So he's almost given up. But then he's surprised, and after 3 weeks, the organization gets back to Harry and sets an interview. He says, okay, I'll give him a chance, but I'm not really excited about this. And then he goes to the interview, and the interviewer was called. They give him another assignment after the interview. It takes him a half a day, and he never even got feedback on that. So in general, Harry is not really serious about this organization, but surprisingly, after 6 weeks, he gets the good news that he's getting an offer. So that's always a good thing. Everyone's happy to get an offer and feel that they're wanted. And Harry gets an offer. When he gets it, he receives it. It's much lower than he expected, particularly after doing his research on Glassdoor at step 3. And he decides to turn down the offer. And this whole process was so frustrating to him and spent so much time that he no longer buys the company products that he used to buy, and he's posted negative reviews on the organization. And this is obviously a process we don't want candidates to experience, but they do very often. As a result of this bad experience, Harry doesn't buy the products. He's posted negative reviews on Glassdoor. Two of his friends are not applying to the same organization, and he's not going to apply to it again. And unfortunately, this is not a unique situation for this Harry with this organization. This is things we see in many, many companies. And on the other hand, if Harry's experiences were positive, we understand what a impact that has not only on recruiting, but on the whole relationship with the market and the organization. He would, if Harry, when a candidate has a positive experience like Harry, he would refer his friends to the candidates. He would keep tracking open opportunities, even if he wasn't accepted to a role. He would make recommendations that he got, and his loyalty to the products would go higher. And what's amazing is this item here on the right left corner, on the right bottom corner, is candidates, even when they don't receive an offer, or even when they decide to turn down an offer that they got from an organization, if they had a positive experience in the recruiting process, would reapply 95% of the time and would refer others 97% of the time, which just shows, even when you don't accept a candidate, how important this is. So then the big question is, what do we actually do, and how can we affect this excellent candidate experience? So this is a topic we could spend hours on, but I do want to touch quickly on 6 ideas, and Jessica will show how some of these ideas are actually implemented through SuccessFactors platform. So one really important thing is around nurturing a relationship. So this is something that your marketing teams in your organizations, particularly if you're a B2C company, have learned for years. And one of our roles in recruiting these days is to learn how to think like the marketing function, which means nurturing a population of candidates over time. And that means not just looking at them as a one-time short-term relationship that they've applied, is there an opportunity for them, yes or no, but particularly in your core functions, for your core roles and your core locations, how you continue to manage a relationship with them, how you keep them warm, how you market to them on a regular basis. Do you get them to have a relationship with you and follow you on LinkedIn? Do you invite them to do all kinds of activities with your organization, such as participate in marketing events, in product events, and other areas, depending on what function they're in, so that when there's another opportunity, you'll already have a relationship with them and be able to leverage your database of relevant candidates. And we're seeing more and more technologies enabling that, but we're also seeing a more and more general approach to thinking about a nurturing relationship, an ongoing long-term relationship with candidates. We used to talk about hire to retire, but we're now talking about hire to rehire. So this is not just candidates, it's also former employees, it's former consultants and other people that have worked with your organization. The second item we understand is really, really critical to an excellent candidate experience is the simplicity, then the ease and the speed of the process. And just a few examples of data. Mobile has become a really critical aspect of simplicity and ease. There are already 30% of candidates, according to recent IBM research, that won't apply to an organization if it's not on a mobile device. Sorry, that 30% already are applying through mobile devices, and 1 in 10 millennials won't apply to an organization if they can't do it over their mobile phone, which is already a pretty critical trend. And as the younger population comes into the workforce, we're going to see that more and more. We also see that candidates will not invest an incredible amount of time in the application process as a first step. They understand that a process takes time, but if the initial application does not take less than 15 minutes, they just won't do it. And so we need to take that into account. And a great case study that's available on the internet about Unilever is that without changing anything else, just by shortening their recruiting process by 80%, by cutting out a lot of non-value added steps, thinking through the candidate perspective on the speed of reaction, they increased their number of candidates in the process by 2 times, which is incredible for everyone feeling how the labor market is tight. A third item, which is really critical in thinking about the candidate experience, is about redefining the relationship and what happens in the process, and understanding that we're now in a either balanced or even in a market that's tended toward the candidates. And this is not new. Anyone who's ever been in a relationship or in a dating situation understands that we need to sell on one hand, but we need to make a buying decision at the same time. And so it's become really tricky. How do you balance in the process this understanding of a mutual selection? How do we both use the recruiting process to carefully assess the fit of the candidate to the organization, but at the same time need to spend more of the energy and time and attention of our recruiting process on selling the opportunity, on selling the organization, on selling the culture to the candidate. So it's a very different balance of the investment of time and effort. And this is not simple. Anyone dealing with recruiting knows that we're still struggling in many organizations to get our hiring managers to be good assessors, good interviewers, to get our recruiting team to be very efficient and effective in doing the right screening and assessment of candidates. But now, on top of doing that selection process, we also need to be selling all the time. And we need to sell a lot of things. We need to sell the general employer value proposition to the candidates through the entire process. We need to understand the different populations that are applying to our organization may have different segmentation, and their unique employee value proposition to the different segments may be very different. But even on top of that, we need to train our recruiting teams and our hiring managers to be very attentive within the recruiting process to understand the unique individual drivers, what they're looking for in their selection, and sell to those unique drivers. That requires asking different questions, talking about other things than we would do if we were just looking at the selection process and so on. So it's figuring out that now an interview, for instance, needs to change from being 90% assessing the person and maybe 10% talking about the role to much more balanced dialogue about both what we want to learn about the candidate, but also addressing what the candidate wants to understand about the opportunity. A fourth item which is really changing is around how assessment is being used and how assessment processes create value, not just for the organization, but also for the candidate. So obviously any assessment process it's always been really, really critical that it is has a high content validity. In other words, it's assessing what it's supposed to be assessing. And that's always been critical. That's not new. What is much more important these days in looking at your assessment tools and processes is three things that have been there but have not been close to as important. One is the importance of face validity. So face validity is whether the candidate believes or feels that the assessment is actually relevant for the job. It could have very high content validity because it's a very professional, valid psychological tool, but still have low face validity to the candidate. And since we now are looking at the candidate experience, we're asking the question, if the candidate goes through this assessment, do they feel that this assessment from their perspective is relevant, is applicable as they understand to the role they're competing? Do they understand why they're being asked these questions or why they're going through these tests? The second thing is how engaging the assessment process is. And this is where new tools that are much more digital, that are much more gamified are coming into assessment, using virtual reality, using video, using games to make the process much more engaging. And the last is the importance of providing value. So if we're expecting the candidate to spend time going through an assessment process, the candidates also expect to get something out of it other than just an opportunity at your organization. And more organizations are thinking about how to provide feedback to the candidate based on these assessments. And candidates are starting to expect it. I've gone through a process, I've filled in forms, I've done tests, I want to get my scores. I want to see what I can learn from it, whether I was accepted to the organization or not. So this is really changing the way assessment is being used and which tools can be used that meet these new requirements. A fifth is the importance of communication. And in a world where there's so much transparency and so much information, communication becomes a really critical aspect, and we find all research shows there's a high level of correlation between candidate experience and the amount, intensity, and quality of the communication that happens between the organization and the candidate. Candidates don't just want to know what the next step is. Traditionally, organizations may tell candidates about what the next step is, like the picture on the left. But what candidates want to know is, what's the whole process? When is it going to happen? Who am I going to meet? What are the, how fast should I expect it to go through? What information are you going to ask from me? Lots and lots of questions that they expect to have. And for a candidate, not knowing what's going on next is a downer and turns us off. And today, in a world where an Amazon, I know exactly where my package is along the way, or even when I order a pizza, I know what steps it in. Then obviously, when I'm thinking about applying for a career opportunity at a company, not knowing for a few days where I am in the process and if the company is going to get back to me at all is a very frustrating process in terms of expectation. So a requirement for much more intensive communication, much more transparency about what the process is required in this environment. And the last thing that really impacts, tip for at least for this short session, that impacts candidate experience is whether we even measure experience, whether the recruiting function looks and measures experience. This is complicated because many organizations are still struggling to measure the classic traditional recruiting, like cycle time, cost per hire, effectiveness of different recruiting sources, acceptance rates, quality of hire. These are things that many organizations are still struggling to get really robust about measuring. But as we look more into candidate experience, all these things really measure the operations of the recruiting, but they don't measure the candidate experience. When we look at candidate experience, we're looking for other things. We're looking from a candidate perspective, how many touch points each candidate has and what the frequency of those are. What the candidate cycle time is. There's a very big difference between measuring the cycle time of the position and measuring the cycle time of the candidate. Or what percent of candidates, whether accepted or not, decide to follow you on social networks? That's building and nurturing a relationship. And most important, many organizations are doing much more feedback from candidates throughout the process. I apply online. How was your application? I came in for an interview day. What was your experience during the interview day? So collecting data directly from the candidate on their experience and feedback throughout the process. So this is a whole additional world about what to measure that brings in the experience into the already complicated world of measuring the recruiting process. So those are 6 ideas. Every one of them requires a lot more depth and thinking about, obviously, and I'm sure Jessica will show you in a second how some of these are supported. And with that, I will pass on the baton.
Hi, hello everyone. So thank you, Eitan. We will go over now the features in SuccessFactors that can improve the candidate experience that Eitan was talking about and improve also the recruiting process in the system, okay? So before we start, I want to go with you over this slide that basically will show us of what we have learned from clients that already have the system, is the gaps between what SuccessFactors offers and basically what is really implemented and used among the clients. So SuccessFactors is all the time releasing new features, new enhancements, but the clients, they normally start with an implementation, and with over the years, they don't really upgrade the system with the new offers that SuccessFactors releases. So we can see the gaps between what was offered, that is constantly increasing, what the client has implemented, and we can see really what is used. And normally, we see the used as the gap between the offer and the use is so big because sometimes they don't receive exactly the explanation, or the implementation was a long time ago. And this is exactly what we're going to do now. We are going to see some features that exist in SuccessFactors, but normally they were not implemented because they need an integration with another module that maybe their clients didn't have at the moment, or because those are new features and you didn't yet have the time to implement them. So we will explain. Now, before we go to the enhancement in the features, I want to go through with you about how is the recruiting process how we see the recruiting process in SuccessFactors, because we, as Eitan was saying before, we have the recruiting process that normally the candidate will see it in one line, but then we have also the satellites. For us, for the clients, the recruiting process is not just I need to hire and this is the person that I'm going to hire. There is a lot of steps that we go through during the recruiting process, but also before and after the recruiting process. So normally we will start the recruiting process with a position creation, or identifying the position that we need to fill, if it's an additional one or a replacement, and we start the requisition creation. The requisition creation normally comes with an offer approval, and once the requisition is created and we have all the information, what is the organizational information of the requisition, who are the key roles, who is the hiring manager, who will be the recruiter. So once we have all this requisition prepared, what will be the job description? So we have the requisition approval, and once the requisition is approved, we need to start sourcing for candidates. We need to start working on the job posting and to start posting the job in every job board, in every school, university that we want to post. So we have a lot of work there. And then basically we get to the candidate. Only then we start working with the candidate. And the candidate, we have the two parts. We have the phase of the candidate, that is the candidate application, if it's an internal candidate or from agency on an external candidate that they need to apply. So we need to start receiving the candidates. And the second part is basically the recruiter's job, the candidate screening. So we need to call the candidate, we need to run the interviews, we need to schedule the interviews, we need to do the background checks. Once we go over these steps with a candidate that is progressing, we get to the offer management. And in the offer management, we will find the internal offer approval. So how much do we want to offer to the candidate? Is it in the range that we have established when we created the requisition? So is the salary in the range? Do I need an extra approval? Who needs to approve this offer? And once the offer that we want to offer to the candidate is approved, so then we need to start the process of offering the job to the candidate. So sending him the offer letter, the candidate needs to accept, to decline, and maybe we need to start again the offer management if he declined based on the salary and we want to try to offer to this candidate a new salary, a new offer. So we start again the offer management. Then after the offer management, we start the onboarding. And after the onboarding, if everything goes right, so we hire the candidate. If you have the Employee Central, so the hire will be done in SuccessFactors. Now, this is the recruiting process, but to get to it, we have a lot of other features and other processes that we do. Things like Eitan was explaining before. We have to brand the company. We need to nurture the candidates. We need to establish this relationship with the candidate. And for that, we have the candidate relation nurturing that we normally what we call it CRM, candidate relation management. After the process, we have the reports and the analytics, we have the experience management, and we have also solutions extensions. For example, if SuccessFactors doesn't have a standard solution, so we can go and develop a new solution and integrate it to SuccessFactors. Now, this is the process, and I will go very quick on this slide, but we took the process and based on what we have learned working with implementing the recruiting, we have identified what are the special features that will improve the recruiting experience and the candidate experience per each one of the buildings that we were talking. So we will start going after each one of them, but some examples. In the requisition creation, we have the feature that integrates the position management to the requisition. We have the job profile. We'll also have in the sourcing, we will talk about the recruiting posting. In the candidate application, we have the message center. We have the business rules, the new features that the new functionality that SuccessFactors is releasing for every one of the templates that we use. We have the career site builder that is related to the candidate experience, the RMK, the recruiting marketing. And finally, we will talk also about talent pools and campaign management that is part of the talent pool. So let's start with the position to requisition. And what is basically the position to requisition? When a client has the recruiting and has also the employee central, and they manage the position as part of the employee central model, the system allows creating requisitions directly from a vacant position. So what it means to create the requisition from the position, it means that we can immediately, or we can schedule a job that will open the job requisition for a future date. Okay, so for example, many companies that we work in the beginning of the year, they do the budget of the new additional positions that they will have over the queues. And they want, from the position, they want to schedule a job that will open the job requisition in the exact time of the year according to the budget plan. And when we open the requisition, I want to explain to you what it means basically to open the requisition from the position. So we take the position and we open the requisition from here. The system will take the information that we mapped from the position already into the job requisition. So we streamline information from the position to the requisition. And with that, we save time when opening the requisition. But I think that even more important than the time, it's also that we avoid data errors during the opening of the requisition. So we get exactly the organizational information, we get exactly the salary range, we can get exactly who will be the stakeholders of the job requisition, all this information that today a recruiter or the hiring manager, whoever is opening the job requisition, they need to add this information this information manually, also taking time, but also making errors. Another thing that we can see that the position to requisition brings is to short the time that takes us to open the requisition in terms of approval. When we are opening a job requisition today that is not connected to the position, what happens is that normally the approval flow of the job requisition is very long, because they also sometimes clients, they use the approval flow also to approve opening the position or approving even to open that position now. When we think about managing the positions already in the system, we have the approval flow of the position that it's done as part of the position creation. And then when we open the job requisition, we don't need much steps for approval. And I can see that I have done some, in the last 2 years, some projects that for clients that they have 5-6 steps in the requisition approval. And once they started to work with the position to requisition, we decreased the steps for 1 or 2 steps. And it makes a lot of difference for their process. And the other benefit of working with the position to requisition is that basically, because we are starting the recruiting from the position, we also are going to close the vacant position once we hire the candidate. So it's not only looking from the position to requisition, but in the end, the candidate that will fill the position will be automatically be filling the position in the position management and employee central. So it's basically a circle working from the beginning till the end of the process, from what we saw, from identifying the position until the hiring of the candidate. The second feature that I would like to talk is the job profile builder. One of the things about the job profile builder is the job profile builder, it's not a specific feature for the job for the recruiting model. The job profile builder is a platform feature. It's adaptable and instinctive tool used to identify the essentials of a job and permits clients to recognize and define job descriptions, including qualifications, skills, education, certification, competencies and more things that you can add to the profile. The feature is available in several modules, so it means that this feature, it's like a core feature that the platform connect the modules between them. So we will find the job profile builder in the employee profile, in the succession module, in career development, in performance, and in the recruiting. And when integrating the job profile builder with recruiting, it will allow to populate job requisitions with predefined job profiles. So as we say, the job profile will have the job description, will have the job requirement, will have the skills needed, and and we will use the job where we will see the job profile builder coming and impacting the recruiting module. So as we say, we have first of all the job description, and the job description will be used for example, also for the job posting. So every section of the job profile builder can be set to be posted to internal candidate, to external candidate, to both candidates, basically creating the job posting information. So thinking first of all on the time that you will save from recruiters to fill every time or to copy from a document that some companies, they hold it like this in a Word document, all the job descriptions, and then the job description needs to get approval of the HRBP, of the hiring manager. Think about the time that you save when you auto-populate that information, and everyone of the key roles will have access to see it and to update it if needed. The second part, the second purpose of the job profile is the information for the recruiters, because it's auto-populated when a job requisition is open. So the recruiter can go to the job profile builder and understand exactly what kind of candidate, he needs to recruit to the job. And the third one, it's about a specific section in the job profile builder, the competencies. We were talking before about the assessment and how assessments are done. So in SuccessFactors, we have the Interview Central that is used to rate candidates. And the Interview Central works based on competencies. So if you have competencies attached to a job profile, later you will be using those competencies also to rate the candidate. And once the candidate will become an employee, you will be using probably the same competencies to rate the already employee, and making comparisons, checking, doing analytics, and understand what he has improved from the time that he was a candidate, what he still needs to work on. So that's why the job profile builder, as I was saying before, it's a platform feature that also connects between modules. The third one, it's about the recruiting posting. So when we were seeing the blocks of the recruiting posting, the third block was about the sourcing of candidates and posting the job to candidates. And the recruiting posting, it's a feature that it's available in SuccessFactors from 2015. It was actually an SAP acquisition. It was called multi-posting. It's the world leading job posting aggregator. And basically the recruiting posting is a platform which helps the customer to post their open positions, their open jobs, with more than 3,000 sources, job boards, schools, universities. It's a very easy to use interface in just a few clicks. So if I was saying before, when we were seeing the recruiting process, that normally the recruiter will go, or the sourcing will go to every job board and add and post separately in every job board the post, and it takes a lot of time and consumes a lot of time. With recruiting posting, you just select the job boards, the universities that you want to post, and you do it from the system. Of course, most of the information will be mapped from the job requisition. So the job description, the location, if you want to add the salary. So everything can be mapped from the job requisition into the job description that it's posted in the job boards. Another thing that the recruiting posting does is that when you have a contract with the job board, so you have an amount of credits or slots, and the recruiting posting will manage that contract. So it will count. You will be able always to see how many credits you have left. So it will manage your contract with the job board. The next one will be the message center. Message center, if I'm not wrong, it was a release from the 2 previous releases or 3. And basically, the message center, it's a email correspondence. It enables recruiters to have a complete history of the email communication with the candidate. When the recruiters send a manual email, so it's only for the manual, not the automatic emails. So when the recruiters send a manual email to a candidate and the candidate replies back to the email, the entire email communication is stored in the message center, which I think it also improves the work of the recruiter, but it also will improve the candidate experience. So if the candidate will send an email to the recruiter until she replies, until she remembers what she has sent, or until she gets into it, everything will be, all the history will be inside SuccessFactors already. So it will be, she doesn't need to go between the Outlook, Gmail, and SuccessFactors, and the candidate will receive faster replies also, so it will improve the candidate experience. Now, another feature that it started to be released more than 1.5 years ago, and it started from the job requisition, but we can see it today already in the job requisition, in the application, in the candidate profile, is the MDF and the business rule. I would like to focus on the business rules, but for the ones that don't know, MDF, I would say that it's a field. We see it as a field in the system, but it's a field that it's going now cross modules inside SuccessFactors, improving the integration between modules. So when we talk about the recruiting, it improves a lot the integration with Employee Central, what information we can bring from Employee Central, and also what information we can move to Employee Central later. But the one that I wanted to focus more, it's about the business rules. So business rules in the job requisition. If we need to auto-populate some information based on a division or what is the salary range, information that we want to bring, information that we want to calculate, and warnings that we want to show to the recruiting, so we can create all these business rules in the job requisition. Who will be the hiring manager, for example, it can be done with the business rules, and also that part will be auto-populated. We will have business rules also in offer approvals. So today, not today, but before in SuccessFactors, the offer approval was just a template that you needed to add all the information. Today, with the business rules, we can calculate, for example, what will be the bonus that we will offer to the candidate based on the salary that we want to offer to the candidate. We will find also business rules in the application. So, for example, if a candidate will say that will answer a question that we are doing correctly, so we can move him automatically to another step of the pipeline. So not just the disqualifying questions, we can take the disqualifying questions to a different level with the business rules, okay? And we have also in the candidate profile. So business rules. So business rules is a game changing in the recruiting model. It makes the recruiter experience also much better, and of course, based on that, it will improve also the experience of the candidate with a faster process, with better answers. Okay. And the next features that I'm going to talk, they are more, yes, for the candidate. And the first one is the Career Site Builder. Career Site Builder is the wizard that we used for the RMK. So what is the RMK? RMK is the recruiting marketing module that is part of the recruiting management. The recruiting marketing, in two words, is the external portal, the premium external portal of SuccessFactors. Is a portal that you can design and to brand based on your company branding. So if we go to the standard SuccessFactors portal, we didn't have that option. The portal was what SuccessFactors created. With RMK, we can go to another level and we can brand the portal to look as the branding of the company. As Eitan was saying before, we need to attract candidates, and attracting candidates can be done with a very good career portal. We can add the information about the company that we want the candidate to see and to convince him to apply to the job requisitions and to come to work with us. So it will be like the business card of the company for the candidate. And the Career Site Builder, what it means is that it brings, as I was saying before, so the Career Site Builder basically is the feature that allows you, the client, to create your own career site very, very, very easy. It's a very user friendly, it's a very friendly interface. It comes with the best practices component. So for example, what you're seeing here in the screen are all the standard components that come with SuccessFactors. So the picture, the text, the categories. You can add Google Maps to show where are you posting the jobs, and you can make it very attractive, as I said before. You can also create with Java code or HTML. You can also create custom elements if you would like. But the basic thing about the Career Site Builder is that you, the client, will have the control. So you will not need the help from a partner or the help from a site developer to do your work, to keep your site attractive and up to date. And it's very nice. One of the new features as part of the Career Site Builder is that now they have also released the option to use the Career Site Builder for internal candidates. And one more thing, it also allows you not just to create a site, the career portal, but it also allows you to create landing page. So if you want to advertise a specific job, you can create by your own landing pages to capture data directly to the candidate record. And everything of this can be done very easily by you, by the administrator of the system. The last point that we will talk is about the candidate relation management. And in the candidate relationship management, we will find two items. The first one is the talent pool. So talent pool it's also a pretty new release in SuccessFactors. It's around a year ago it was released. And before that, just to bring the idea, before that we had what we call the candidate pool. All the candidates were together as part of the same pool. Since the talent pool was released, we can create different talent pools depending on the needs of the recruiter. So for example, if you want to group all of the sales candidates, you can do it using the talent pool. In the talent pool itself, besides just grouping the candidates, you can also create statuses for each talent pool. So a very simple example for that is that, let's say I have a talent pool for Java developers, and I want to manage it by the years of experience. So I will have a status of 2 years experience, 5 years experience, 7 years experience, and I can also group them by the experience that they hold. And then it makes the work very easy to find those talents that we want, to keep contact with those talent candidates that we have in the talent pools, because from the talent pool we can also email the candidates, we can run campaigns to the candidates, to advertise, and of course everything that was said before, to keep that contact, to keep the candidate happy, as Eitan was saying, Harry happy, to have a good experience, to remind him that he's important for us and we want to keep the contact with him, and to advertise the jobs when we have a relevant job for them. So everything of this, it's done through the talent pool. And the second item of the candidate relationship management is the email campaign, that it's also related to the talent pool, but not specifically. You can run campaigns with candidates that are not in the talent pool. But in SuccessFactors, you can now create those campaigns. Of course, everything following the GDPR. So the candidate needs to say that he's interested to receive marketing emails. And then you can create those emails campaign. Emails campaign, they can be branded. So you can brand as your company if you want to brand based on division. So you can create a very easily branded campaign, and you can also track after the results. So when you launch a campaign, you can see who opened the email, who clicked in the link that you sent in the email, who didn't receive the email, who didn't click. So you also can track after the results, and based on that, improve your campaigns for the future. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Jessica, and thanks, Eitan. That's fantastic. And if I could caveat what Jessica was saying with that email campaigns, we also tried that for ourselves at AKT. And with the email campaigns and the self-creating career site builder, which was fantastic, we didn't have to hire a web developer for that. We actually increased the number of quality, and I say quality, candidates by 60%, and actually were able to track that. So that is fantastic. So thank you for attending, and we hope you have a good rest of the week and a fantastic weekend, and we'll see you at the next AKT Insight Series webinar. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.